Hi. Um, it's really hard for me um, in some ways because, first of all, as a child, I remember making a conscious decision that honesty was important. And unfortunately, honesty in many places cuts both ways. Sometimes it helps me and sometimes it hurts me. I have been rewarded for honesty and I have been punished for honesty. Um, Also, there's something wrong with me. I am really I find it hard because I have anxiety to when I get stressed out to shut up. It's hard for me to be quiet. It's I need to let out all that anxiety. And unfortunately, working at Amazon, there is um, I don't know if I should say that I'm smart or if I'm aware or what it is, but I'm aware of how manipulative it is. So it's very stressful for me. Um, so I often am voicing my concerns, my opinion, and management doesn't really appreciate that. So, but this video is not about Amazon. That's just an example. I have had other jobs where I was very vocal and honest, and I ended up working myself out of a job because of that. Um, and it's really frustrating for me. I don't want to be this way. I haven't figured out how to, I guess, channel that anxious energy. Uh, but it's so frustrating. Uh, the anxiety combined with the honesty just undermines me. And if I become very anxious and I'm not on an antidepressant or anti or anti I forgot anti-anxiolytic or whatever it's called. I don't know how to say the anti-anxiety medicine. There's a special word, anxiolytic or something like that. I'm not sure how to say it, but it's then I become depressed. So I have been for years now debating about things I should or shouldn't say on this channel. And I was watching a video yesterday and this guy was talking about being authentic and that how a lot of people are afraid, and rightfully so. We don't live in as free of a nation as people think we do. Um, and he was talking about just being authentic and speak what you believe is the truth. Of course, if you don't have any proof, that's kind of hard. But yeah, man, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. So I've had some anxiety for the past few years. There are things I want to say on this channel, but I feel like, should I? But I guess I believe in being true to myself. I believe in being honest. I believe in trying to make others aware. And I know that there are people out there that are going to disagree with me. I guess my biggest concern isn't being kicked off of YouTube, which would, it would kind of suck because, I've worked for so long to build up my channels. It isn't even that people will disagree with me. It's more that I will be persecuted. There it is. I said it. So I'm just going to dive right in. I want to talk about our next president, Mr. Trump. I get really irritated when everybody refers to him as President Trump. I don't really believe that somebody who is a former president should be addressed as President Trump. I think that is inappropriate. And so I will not be referring to him as President Trump. He's Mr. Trump or President-elect Trump, but he is not President Trump. When he's in office, I'll call him President Trump. But I'm probably not going to say too much about him while he's president unless there's a good reason for it. So there's a lot of questions as to what is going to happen when he becomes president again. And I think that it's not going to be as good as his supporters think it's going to be. I think also that it's not going to be as bad as his opponents think it's going to be. I think we're going to be somewhere in the middle. Now, if I were to rate what could possibly happen, where we'll just go to 0. What the heck? 0 is where this becomes a totalitarian dictatorship, and 10 stays pretty much the same. I think that if there were other people influencing Trump, that it would likely go down to maybe an 8. And the reason I say that is because Trump is a narcissist, probably, and some people call him a malignant narcissist. And that's, I'd have to research that more and see how that's different from psychopathy. But I think that, it's fair to probably say that that's true. Everybody talks about how he's transactional. I'm going to give you this. What are you going to give me in return kind of thing? And narcissists are that way. They're looking for benefit. If they don't see a benefit in you, then they don't have interest in you. When I lived in Indonesia, my wife had a best friend, very nice young lady. Her father was Chinese Indonesian. And one day he asked me, he was like, well, I want to get auto parts from America to ship here or something like that. And he wanted me to go into business with him. And when I explained to him that I didn't have any connections in that regard, he totally lost interest in talking to me. It was like he never really spoke to me again unless I, said, hey, how you doing? But other than that, he just ignored me. And that is the way that somebody like Trump or that father will view people. If he can't get something from you, he has no interest in you, or she. And if they think they can get something from you, like if you're famous, you've got lots of money, or something, they will be very nice to you until you either expect more of them than they can get out of you, or you do something else that pisses them off, in which case, you better hope they're not a psychopath, because a psychopath will work to destroy your life. And I mean, like, totally. They will it's bad. So I can't say for certain whether or not Trump is a psychopath. I mean, there are some traits there, but it's not clear to me, and I haven't spent time with him, obviously. I do know from previous encounters with people in that kind of spectrum of divergent behavior that it can be unpleasant, and it can be hard to protect yourself from being manipulated or tricked or conned. So yeah, I'm very, very much sure that he is a narcissist. So the question is does he have any sense of honor? So if he's a narcissist who has a sense of honor, a sense of, well, I made this commitment, then he'll follow through on it. But if he doesn't have that sense of commitment, of honor, of promises being important, then he's just going to do what he wants to do, and as far as he can get away with it. Like when the January 6th attack on the Capitol building was happening, or the Congress was happening, he was being told by advisors, by family members, you have to stop that. You have to tell them to stand down. And he just waited for hours. And then eventually he told them, go home, go home. But it was very clear. You know, I've watched different videos, and I've watched the progression of the actions that day, and it was very clear that things were set up with the hope of overturning the election in 2020. And he only gave up on that when he saw that the insurgents had failed and would not succeed. When he saw that, I think that was at the point when he saw all the police from other areas coming in, because he had a proxy who was in control of the National Guard, who had been held back for hours. So again, I think that the people who are helping him, probably some of them are narcissists, some of them are certainly psychopaths. There are some very dangerous people that have been helping him. I can't say whom. I can say that there are people that concern me, like Alex Jones and Roger Stone and Robert Mercer, and a few others. But I can't say what their agenda is exactly and how dangerous they are or aren't. But I can say that depending on how much influence they really hold over Trump. And, you know, Trump is the kind of person who is very good at selling, at marketing himself. That's why people think he's much better than he is, I guess you could say, because he built up the apprentice program under his, I guess you can say, guidance, with the express purpose, along with other actions that he took, to build himself up as something more than he actually is. And that has worked out very well. It has made him look like this amazing businessman. But amazing business people don't bankrupt casinos. Everyone makes mistakes, but unless somebody can demonstrate to me how he got more than he lost by bankrupting those casinos, I have to say that was a very strong indicator of his real business acumen. And I also understand that Roy Cohn mentored him, and later Roger Stone mentored him, and they both have the same mentality of deny, deny, deny. Even after you have lost or you have been convicted, keep denying. Never admit the truth. And that is something that is very characteristic of them. And so Trump will never, never admit that he lost the 2020 election, even though he's the one that tried to rig it. He's the one that tried to have the insurrection happen. He'll never admit that he did that or that he was wrong about the election being rigged. And if it comes out, perhaps, that the 2024 election was rigged by him or by his proxies, he will never admit that either, ever. He will go to his grave, always defending his innocence. So again, we come back to the problem of just how he feels about promises, about commitments. Now, as far as what he said on the campaign trail, I am, number one, he has flip-flopped on various issues. He's flip-flopped on LGBTQ. He's flip-flopped on abortion. He's flip-flopped on other things. And I think for him, unless it's something that personally affects him one way or the other, he doesn't really care. He just looks to see which way the wind is blowing, and he goes in that direction. So I think on those non-core issues for him, not for his supporters, but for him, unless there's somebody right behind him who has a huge amount of influence over him, he will probably, as much as possible, leave those things alone. Like he has publicly stated that he is responsible for Roe versus Wade and Casey versus Planned Parenthood being overturned, but that it's in the hands of the states now. Now, there are factions within his supporters that want all the states to have a ban on abortion, on IVF, and other things. Now, I have a cousin who, and I know other people who had to use various forms of fertility help. I know people who've had IVF. And for the government to ban IVF, it doesn't really make any sense at all. It's just totally nonsensical. And let's be honest here. The majority of Christians do not have an edict against abortion and IVF and contraception, except for like the Catholics. So it seems kind of like, and I've heard this suggested, but I'm not going to go into this, but it seems like there is a very Catholic influence, or maybe it's Opus Dei influence, to turn the evangelical Christians into another branch of that. So they've kind of been co-opted by the Opus Dei or maybe the Catholic Church, because this is not something that used to be this way in this country. Yes, there's always been sentiment against this kind of stuff, but it's never been this way where there are lots of evangelicals who are like, oh, we can't have this, that, and the other thing, this stuff that we used to just hear from like the Catholics and certain other sects. It was not part of the evangelical message. And in fact, the evangelical message today is not the evangelical message of 20, 30 years ago. This is a fringe that has moved across the evangelical sphere and altered the evangelical movement. But anyways, I digress. So what I want to do now is I want to try to stay on task. I get distracted, sorry. And I want to discuss the possibility of what's going to happen under the Trump administration. Well, number one, I think that absolutely he's going to do his best to make Schedule F happen. And it will happen. Because number one, he did it last time. And Schedule F, for those who don't know, is basically an edict that says if you're in any branch of the government that is under the executive branch and you don't do what Trump says, he can fire you. And there's a lot more to it than that, a whole lot more to it than that. But that's the basic premise, is that you either do what you're told by Trump and his proxies, or you're out of a job, even if you've been with the government for 50 years. So that is, very problematic, because that means that all of those parts of the government that are currently a mix of political persuasions will become aligned entirely with both Trump and the people who have the most influence over Trump. And you may think, well, that's okay. But what if the most influential people are people who are very dangerous or who are very fanatical or something else? And that means that if you have a problem with the government, there will be nowhere to turn. You won't be able to go to the Department of Justice. You won't be able to go to the FBI. You won't be able to go to the FTC. You won't be able to go to the FCC, and so on and so forth. Your hands will be tied because everybody will be taking orders from Trump, directly or indirectly, and his puppet masters. So that is a major, major shift in how the American government operates. It used to be just the administration team that would change from president to president, with some exceptions. Some people have gone from one administration to the next, to the next, to the next. But to a large degree, when you leave, many of the people that you brought on, often for political favors, will leave with you. This will no longer be a thing because people will, instead of being sworn to defend and uphold the Constitution, will be sworn to defend and uphold the desires, the wants, the needs, the whims of the president. The Constitution will become a secondary thing. So I think best case scenario, we're going to be looking at a government that is very much tilted in one direction. And I say that because we have a Supreme Court, because of the idiots in the Democratic Party, who are Republican. And many of them are staunchly very, very conservative. Some of them are criminals, have violated the law, and are being protected by Congress. The Republicans specifically have protected them from any repercussions that Congress could enact against them. And for some reason, Biden hasn't done anything about them either, which just makes no sense to me. So we have that. And Congress is dominated by Republicans. Now, there are still some old guard Republicans who understand the value of a balanced government, and they will, to one degree or another, be resistant, but they will be forced out. Every old guard Republican, just like Liz Cheney, will either toe the line or during the next election cycle, all those people who have the same agenda as whatever Trump's agenda is will force them out of Congress, which is what happened to Liz Cheney and several others who opposed Trump. A lot of so it will further push the government into the right. And I mean really right. Because when you go from a government that is already corrupt because it's a bipartisan government, which is not how our government was supposed to be, then and the Democrats and Republicans have worked passively and actively through laws and illegal actions to prevent other parties from getting a foothold. And there's a lot of history in that if you want to research it. So when you go from a pseudo bipartisan government to a we're all one party government, because the judicial branch is going to be Republican completely, the Congress and the president all on the Republican side, with a small number, a minority, I should say, of people who are Democratic or other. And I wanted to clarify something about democracy. People who don't like democracy refer to it as mob rule. Mob rule is a negative way to express that is the rule of the people. It's not mob rule. It is that everyone has a voice. Republicanism is the aspect of the Constitution. So we can say that this is a democratic republic or a Republican democracy, but it all boils down to the fact that it's supposed to be everybody has a voice, and we're under the umbrella of protection and guidance of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. There is no mob rule because mobs are like January 6th. That was a mob. So, yeah, the Republicans were being democratic in the mob rule sense. So if we return to the scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is status quo, where the government is basically going to be the same, it is impossible, absolutely impossible, that the government will remain the same. I'm not saying that it'll get better. I'm just saying it is going to swing more to the right. Best case scenario, it'll be an 8 out of 10. And I'm not saying the status quo is good. There are many, many, many problems with our government. It's a long list. Hopefully, as you get older and you pay attention and you try not to let yourself be influenced by one side or the other too much, and you try to read between the lines of what's really going on, you'll understand eventually just how bad our government has become and is not what it's supposed to be. I don't think it's going to be an 8, though. I think that is highly unlikely. Number one, because of Trump's personality defects, like being a narcissist. Number two, because of the very powerful people who are backing him, like Robert Mercer, Roger Stone, and Alex Jones, and many, many more. Number three, because of the fanatical MAGAs and the fanatical evangelicals who are militant. Number four, because of groups like the Heritage Foundation and their Project 2025, which seek to, depending on who you want to believe, I'm saying probably it's going to be between, we're going to shift to about a 5 on that scale, where 10 is status quo. Now you're saying, well, Glenn, that's not fair. You should have made it, 1 to 10, where 10 is the government shifts all the way to democratic, to the left side. Why? Sure, he voted Democratic or registered Democratic for most of his life, but he's a Republican now. No, you got to understand, he's transactional. He's chosen the Republican camp because they're easier to manipulate, and he's not going to go in that direction unless he sees that is what enough of them want, that they'll give him what he wants in return. So there's no point in going in that direction. It's not going to happen. So my guess is 5, maybe 6 on the scale, which means that this country will become very much compromised. I mean, it's always been compromised for my whole life and since before my existence, but it's going to get rather worse under Trump because of the type of person he is and because of who's influencing him. And that means that we're going to be moving into a time when America will lose human rights, will lose equal rights and will become a place where many of the more radical and unforgiving and unsympathetic, lacking compassion, and so on people will feel free to voice how they feel. I mean, like I watched a video where some people near the southern border were talking about how they would go to the border with rifles and shoot illegal immigrants crossing the border as if they were not even human. Yeah. Why did they do that? Because according to them, I mean, the things that Trump had said had emboldened them to feel that that was okay to commit murder in the name of whatever that is. Yeah, so. And I'm going to talk about that more later, but that's going to drop me down to the other end of the scale. So, and I don't want to go there quite yet. So there is another possibility in that the democratic Christians who want this nation to be dominated by Christianity, but in a more non-Christian friendly way. At least that is what I have heard. So these people will somewhat impose their beliefs on everybody else, but will allow a certain amount of freedom. And I'm not excited about that. I mean, you have to understand, I grew up Christian. My uncle and my grandfather were both ministers. I didn't leave Christianity because I was persecuted or I was abused or something like that. I left Christianity because it just doesn't make sense. But that's another story. So I'm not really comfortable with a Christian-led government telling me that I have to live my life a certain specific way. I already live a good life. I mean, as far as my behavior, I try to always do the right thing. Now, I happen to work for a company that doesn't believe in the right thing and is persecuting me. But that aside, despite the fact that my morality is undeniably based in Christianity, it also spans other religions because most religions have the same basic beliefs about morality. It's just the details that get in the way. So the idea that some group of Christians is going to say, well, you know, hey, you can still be a deist, but you do have to behave in a way that is okay with us. I think that America has definitely lost its way, but that is to a large degree because of the elites, the businesses, and the corrupt politicians behaving in a way that over time has become mimicked by the masses. And then, of course, there's the influence of the media on our culture, on our behavior. I mean, watching American Idol, it's embarrassing. I mean, you get these people who can't sing or can't sing without stage fright. And when they get rejected, and sometimes Simon Cowell is very unkind to people and unnecessarily unkind, but it is an entertainment show, and they do sign an agreement. And these people behave like, I don't even want to say small children. I want to say small, tired, spoiled children. So I do believe that America needs to be taken in a different direction. But the direction that I've seen from Trump has been very divisive, not unifying. And that is always bad. And when you look at history, and when you look at past leaders who have been divisive, who have pointed out a specific group as being the source of the problems, of the woes, and if we can just get that group under control or eliminated, then our problems will be gone. Which is what Trump has done with immigrants and Mexicans and Haitians. Those people typically are seeking more control, and they're not going to be good for the country. And if you pay attention to history, you'll see this. You combine that with his narcissistic tendencies, his transactional nature, his willingness to lie incessantly, to convince people that he's a good guy and he's being persecuted and blah, 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 blah. I mean, I can't recall another presidential candidate who has started complaining that the vote is rigged before he's even been in an election. And then when he lost the next election, he was, it was rigged. And he made a lot of people upset and caused the death of a woman because she believed him. And a scared cop, I guess, shot her to death during the insurrection. But anyways, I digress. So I think that would be the next step down. And then we can go another step down. And this is where it gets complicated. Because the closer we get to zero, the more possibilities there, in my opinion, are. So possibility number one is that the fanatical evangelicals who don't want any religion other than their brand of Christianity. So all of you who are not fanatical evangelicals, who follow lunatics like that guy from Moscow, Idaho, you are not going to be on the right side of things, and unless you fall into line in lockstep with the fanatics, you will be in trouble. Because these people are very intolerant, they're very angry, they're very militant, and not in a way that keeps with the teachings of Jesus. Now, we can look at Jesus' teachings and we can understand that Jesus was not entirely a pacifist. In fact, there's one, and I don't remember which of the books of the Bible it is, but there is a particular book of the Bible where he is stating very clearly that he's not about family unification. He's about tearing families apart. And there's a larger context to it, which is, you know, if you're either with me or you're against me. And I've seen that in people I've known and loved, where they're like, you don't believe in Jesus? Well, then I can't talk to you. Or you think you believe in Jesus. You think you're a Christian, but you're not actually a Christian, because they are. You know, one of the problems with Christianity is very much, I'm right and you're wrong, and you can have 20 different types of Christians together, and many of them will be like, yeah, you're wrong, 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 wrong. And I'm not even talking about the non-Trinitarians in specific here, or the Jehovah's Witnesses, or the Seventh-day Adventists, or the Mormons, or any of the other more fringe, I guess you could say, type of Christians. I'm just talking about in general with all the denominations of Christianity. They don't even believe that people from some of the other denominations are Christians. It's yeah. So anyways, so the fanatical Christians will impose their will 100% through Trump. And some of them think Trump is a prophet or a reincarnation of Jesus. And they're just, it's just a little bit crazy. Because he's definitely not. So this nation that we call the United States of America will cease to exist. It will become a theocratic nation, Christian nation, that is. And there will be a lot of very bad things that will happen. And we can talk about the fact that there won't be abortion, there won't be the morning after pill, there won't be in vitro fertilization, there won't be contraception. People who are minorities will become second-class citizens at best. Now, that lunatic from Moscow, Idaho, he likes slavery. He would like slavery to be revived. So it's possible that the minority groups, and that could include some white people, will become slaves. And of course, let's not forget, women's rights will be gone. Women will be, again, chattel or property of their husbands. They will not have the right to vote unless their husband is dead. And they will be required to, serve him. And yeah, the unequal traditional relationship that made so many women miserable back before women's equality became a thing, a real thing. And it's something that I celebrate, although it has produced some negative side effects. I think that it is important for women to be equal to men and not have to kiss their butts in a marriage or otherwise. But yeah, these fanatical Christians have very old-fashioned view of things, and it's very detrimental to a large portion of the population. And that is where we can take Project 2025 to the furthest reach and beyond. Because Project 2025 is kind of a crossover between the Christian Democrats or the Democratic Christians, and the fanatical Christians. But, that isn't even the worst possibility. So Trump has said some crazy things on the campaign trail, like arresting his political opponents, arresting reporters he doesn't like, firing anybody in the government that doesn't do what he says, and so on and so forth. He's talked about wanting to be a dictator for a day. Well, let me remind you that somebody who becomes a dictator for a day uses that one day to become a dictator for life. It's not a one-day thing. Dictators don't want to be dictator for a day. They're just trying to trick you, okay? So there are two types of dictatorships that could occur outside of the fanatical Christian one, because that would be a dictatorship. And one of them is Trump just goes and just follows Erdogan and Putin and Xi and all of these other dictators that he seems to admire, or at least claims he admires, and turns America into a repressive, totalitarian dictatorship. Or he will go the route of the other aspect of Putin and then of Kim of North Korea, and create a cult of personality. And I would argue that neither of those is good. But I would say that a cult of personality dictatorship with Trump at the head, where either he's being worshipped as a prophet or a reincarnation of Jesus, or that he's just being thrust into everybody's consciousness constantly, like Xi Jinping. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I'm not trying to say Xi Jinping, which I think is the correct way to say crazy. Xi Jinping is, yeah, I could be wrong, but President Xi, he is. I mean, it is a cult of personality too, more like Putin than Kim, but totalitarian dictatorships generally are led by a person who's got a really big ego, and Trump has a really big and fragile ego. And given his comments about persecuting his enemies, I would say that it would turn into a human rights situation in which people are being thrown in prison for political reasons and are being made to disappear or being executed for political reasons. So yeah, that's pretty close to zero, if it not a zero. And that is a possibility. It just depends. I think it depends on multiple factors, and obviously Trump is one. And it also depends on the people who are most influential around him, like Bannon and Mercer, some of the Christians, and some Roger Stone, and several others, Mike Johnson. I have been hesitant about making this video because I'm afraid that I'm going to be on that list. But I feel that it's important to state what I believe, to be honest, and to warn people that we might be in for a bad time. Now, I will point out that there was a statement made at a Christian event prior to the election in which Trump said, 4 years from now, or something to this, I'm going to paraphrase it. 4 years from now, you're not going to have to worry about voting anymore. And they cheered, which suggests his intention is to become a dictator, that with the Republicans controlling most of the government and him reinstating Schedule F, which will further cement control, that he will use that backing, and he will additionally find people within the military who are willing to do what he wants, and he'll promote them from whatever rank they are up to commanders of the military branches. Army, Air Force, Marines, Space Marines, Navy, they'll receive new commanders. I don't think that, no matter what the scenario is that actually occurs, I think that some of the things that Trump plans to do, like the tariffs, are going to be bad. And the reason I say that is this. When you impose tariffs on countries from which America gets a lot of resources, that automatically means that unless there are local sources of those same products that are are inexpensive, the cost of buying those things will go up. And since we import a lot of our produce from Mexico and other parts of Central and South America, and we import a lot of our construction materials from Mexico and Canada. And we do get food from Canada as well, and we get other things from Europe, from Asia. I mean, and we have so many companies that, in their bid to decrease costs while keeping the price the same, so they can give investors more money, they have moved their manufacturing to countries where the value of the currency is very low. And the government is friendly to this because the government's gonna, make lots of money. So that means that unless Trump gives an exemption to his cronies or to all of the businesses that are based here but are actually manufacturing overseas, that means entire sectors, large swaths of the things that we buy on a regular basis will go up in price, just like it has become very hard to buy a property and to rent. I assume you guys are aware of that. I am. It hurts. And a lot of companies are not willing to keep up with the cost of living. So these companies are price gouging us while paying low wages and stuff overseas. And this is not Trump's fault. This is something that's been going on for a very long time now. For decades and decades. Companies have moved their manufacturing. They've outsourced to other countries, other companies, and they have also done other things to minimize their costs so they can maximize their profits and what they pay to their investors, which means that if you buy stocks from those companies, you're going to get more money, which encourages people to buy more stocks, which means more money, and so on and so forth. And I hate to break it to you guys, but Trump's idea about the tariffs is not a good one. Unless there's a whole lot more to the story than what I've heard. And it also means that other things are going to become more expensive too. I mean, think about it. Computer supplies are mostly made overseas. And medical supplies are mostly made overseas. Car parts, many of them are made overseas. Cars. Then there are, of course, the raw and semi-processed materials, most of which come from overseas. Some of the most important things that we need for some industries are mostly coming from China as the biggest supplier. I would love to believe that everything is going to get better under Trump. But sadly, I am unable to see that that's going to happen because there is evidence to the contrary from his mouth. I am hoping that, unlike war criminal Biden, that Trump will stop supporting Israel because Israel is engaged in genocide and is violating our laws and international laws. Of course, the American government has done that forever. But it would be nice if Trump would, do that and would get the problems resolved in the Ukraine. But I don't see a man who cares about us. He's going to gut the EPA. He's going to gut education. He doesn't like unions, no matter what he says. He is extremely manipulative and self-serving. You guys don't seem to understand that the cronyism and the nepotism that he has already displayed clearly demonstrates that he's in bed with the elitists, be they just the rich people, or and probably also, of course, the rich business people, the big corporations. You guys think that Trump represents you. He's never been poor. He grew up rich. His daddy helped him. So if you think that he relates to you, that he understands you, that he cares about you, the only thing that's true of those three things is he understands you enough to know what to say, give or take, to manipulate you, to control you. And he's already demonstrated that he's good at that. Very good at that. Again, I don't think that Trump will just drop us down to an 8 on that 10-point scale. I think we're looking at something far less pleasant, around a 5. I'm hoping it isn't going to go down to the tyranny, but it is a possibility. This is really a depressing subject for me. And I would love it if when Trump gets into office, the things I think are going to happen aren't going to happen. But I doubt it. Anyways, taking my 10-point scale, where 0 is absolute tyranny, repressive dictatorship, and 10 is just like right now, basically. Where on that scale do you think we're going to fall with Trump as president? Now, I know some of you are saying that, well, it's not going to be status quo. So I'll just say this. If you think that it's going to be moved in a more positive direction, please feel free to just, say that. If you want to, you can extend the scale out to 20. Where 20 is going to become heaven on earth, which is ludicrous, but okay. I do have to remind you, as always, my community rules are pretty straightforward. No rudeness, no insults. Civil discussion is appreciated, and and if you feel like you can't be civil, if you're going to attack other people, whether they're people who agree with me or disagree with me, you're just you lose your voice on my channel. And I would much rather hear your thoughts than have to silence you. So be polite and be honest, but be nice. There's no reason to be mean. Even if you think the other person is stupid or they are uneducated, I don't have tolerance for that. I'm just a little bit too old, and I've dealt with too much of that kind of crap in my life to tolerate it. So, yeah. Thank you so much for watching this video. And now a word from our sponsor. Would you please help me out by liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, and turning on notifications if you'd like to help me financially with my other 2 channels, or just because I'm going to be having shoulder surgery on December 13th, 2024, and I'll be out of work for 3 to 4 months if I'm even employed by that time, because Amazon has been trying to fire me on trumped up charges. I would love to have the support, but only if you can afford to do so. You can either go to my channel, Glenn's Fast Reviews, and join as a member there, or you can go to patreon.com/GlennMII, and you can help me out there. And there's a message after this that's basically going to be very similar to this, just a little bit longer. Thank you. I'm sorry to do this, but I need to ask for your help. Because Amazon and Sedgwick won't take responsibility for the injury I sustained at work, that is going to cause me to have my shoulder replaced on November 29th of 2024. I'm going to be off of work for 3 to 4 months, and the pay that I'll be getting from Amazon during that time, because Sedgwick will not pay me anything, will be after taxes and benefits, probably somewhere in the area of $10, maybe $12, something like that, per hour of a 40-hour week. And so that's going to be very financially troublesome for me, to put it mildly. I mean, just my rent alone is like $1,150, and then there are all the other expenses. I do have some help, but I do appreciate it if anybody is willing to help. You can join my channel, Glenn's Fast Reviews, or you can go to patreon.com/GlennMII and become a member there. If you can't safely do that, please don't, though. I don't want anybody financially getting into trouble trying to help me. That would just that would make me feel really, really bad, as if somehow I was responsible for the choice you made, even though it was your choice. So if you can't, that's okay. It's okay. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Hope you have a great day.